What would you do if you saw someone being humiliated in public, not because they broke a rule, but just because of how they looked? That's exactly what happened inside a bank in Los Angeles, where an elderly man was mocked, insulted, and humiliated in front of dozens of people. But what the staff didn't know was that the man worked for one of Hollywood's most beloved actors, Keanu Reeves. What Keanu did when he walked in, it didn't just silence the room, it left the entire internet speechless. This story will change how you see respect forever. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in downtown Los Angeles. The First Federal Bank on Sunset Boulevard was alive with the usual weekday rhythm. People streamed in and out, some on their lunch breaks, others trying to squeeze in a quick errand before heading to work. Inside the bank, the atmosphere buzzed with activity. Phones ringing softly, the low hum of conversations, and the steady clicking of keyboards. The line to the teller counters was long but orderly, a mix of professionals in suits, retirees handling their pensions, and everyday citizens managing their finances. Among the customers stood an elderly man in his 60s, dressed modestly in a simple dark suit. The fabric showed signs of wear, slightly faded at the shoulders and sleeves, and his shoes were polished but well used. His name was Robert, a long-time personal driver. 4 years, Robert had faithfully worked for one of Hollywood's most respected stars, Keanu Reeves. Today, Robert had been asked to handle a small task, depositing a paycheck into Keanu's account, along with a couple of routine documents. It wasn't something unusual. He had done it a few times before with the proper authorizations neatly tucked inside a leather folder he carried. As his turn approached, Robert straightened his posture and stepped up to the counter with a polite nod. "Good morning," he greeted the young bank teller, offering a small, respectful smile. He gently placed the folder on the counter and began to explain the nature of his visit, speaking in a soft, courteous tone. But before he could even finish his first sentence, the teller abruptly interrupted him. With a condescending smirk, she glanced at the name on the account and then at Robert's appearance. "Sir, this account isn't in your name. Why are you even here?" she said loudly enough for nearby customers to hear. "You need proper documents. Honestly, people like you waste our time." Her words cut through the air like a knife. The cheerful hum of the bank seemed to fade for a moment. Robert's face flushed deep red. He could feel the stares from others in the line and even from a few staff members nearby. Whispers began to ripple across the next counter. A couple of customers turned their heads, some raising eyebrows, others exchanging looks. The once routine task had suddenly turned into a humiliating scene. Trying his best to remain calm and composed, Robert drew in a quiet breath and steadied his voice. He held up the neatly folded letter, the official authorization signed by Keanu himself, and began again. "I work for Mr. Reeves. I'm just here to deposit on his behalf. I have the signed letter here," he said softly, offering the document toward the teller. His tone remained respectful, almost apologetic, though the humiliation was already weighing heavily on him. His fingers trembled slightly as he presented the letter, hoping this would clear any misunderstanding. Before the teller could even glance at the paper, another staff member, a supervisor by the looks of her, walked over. Her heels clicked sharply against the tile floor, and her expression radiated annoyance. Without giving Robert so much as a chance to explain, she cut in loudly, her voice echoing through the room. "Mr. Reeves? And who are you supposed to be?" she asked mockingly, her eyes scanning Robert from head to toe, taking in his worn suit and tired posture. "His assistant. Chauffeur." She gave a little scoff. "Do you think that gives you the right to handle banking here?" she continued, her tone dripping with condescension and disdain. The sharp words struck like a slap in the face. Heads turned. By now, most of the people in the bank had noticed what was unfolding. Conversations hushed. Phones were lowered. A pregnant silence hung in the air as customers craned their necks to get a better look. Some began whispering quietly amongst themselves. A few customers shook their heads in disbelief at the staff's behavior, while others exchanged amused smirks, as if entertained by the public scolding. Robert's heart pounded in his chest. The flush in his cheeks deepened. His hands, clutching the letter, began to tremble visibly. The entire situation was spiraling beyond his control. The urge to escape, to avoid further humiliation, welled up inside him. He glanced down at the floor, his voice caught in his throat. Quietly, he began to step back, ready to walk away in shame, when suddenly, The front door of the bank swung open. The chime above the entrance rang sharply. All eyes turned toward the door, and in walked a familiar figure. Dressed casually in a simple black t-shirt, a pair of well-worn jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low, Keanu Reeves pushed open the glass door of the bank and stepped inside. He held his phone in one hand, having just sent a quick text to Robert a few minutes earlier to ask if everything was going smoothly. It was supposed to be a simple errand. But as Keanu crossed the threshold, it became clear something was very wrong. He slowed his pace as he took in the scene. The tension in the room was palpable. An uneasy hush had settled over the customers and staff. The normal hum of conversation was gone, replaced by a thick silence. At the counter, Keanu spotted Robert, his longtime driver and trusted employee, standing awkwardly with his head slightly bowed, his hands visibly trembling as he clutched a document. His face was flushed, his posture stiff with embarrassment. Nearby, 2 bank staff members stood rigid, their expressions smug and superior. A crowd of customers had gathered with quiet curiosity, their gazes flicking between the scene at the counter and each other. Keanu instantly understood what had happened. Years in Hollywood had taught him how quickly people could judge by appearances, and it was painfully clear that Robert had been on the receiving end of exactly that. Without hesitation, Keanu slipped his phone into his pocket and strode toward the counter with calm purpose. No raised voice, no dramatic gestures. He simply placed a steady hand on Robert's shoulder, a reassuring gesture, one of quiet solidarity. Then, fixing his gaze on the staff, he spoke with an even, controlled voice. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his tone soft yet unmistakably serious. The simple question carried weight, resonating through the hushed room. Recognition dawned instantly on the faces of the tellers. Their smug expressions drained of color, replaced by nervous smiles and darting eyes. The arrogance that had filled their voices only moments earlier evaporated in an instant. The manager, now flustered, hurried over, stammering, "Oh, Mr. Reeves! We didn't realize. Welcome." Her voice cracked with forced politeness, the sudden shift in her demeanor glaringly obvious. But Keanu didn't return the smile. His face remained composed, his eyes steady. This was not going to be brushed aside with empty pleasantries. Keanu let the manager's nervous stammer hang in the air for a moment, his gaze steady and unwavering. He glanced from one staff member to the next, his calm yet piercing eyes locking with theirs. There was no need to raise his voice. The silence that had gripped the room made every word he spoke land with absolute clarity. Then, in a tone that was calm, deliberate, and firm enough for every ear in the bank to catch, he said, "It shouldn't matter if you recognized me, or him. He came here on business, with the proper documents. You chose to disrespect him, not because of any banking rule, but because of who you thought he was. That's not how you treat people. Not here. Not anywhere." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. You could hear a pin drop. The manager's fake smile faltered, her face flushed with embarrassment. The young teller who had first spoken shrank slightly, her previous arrogance gone, replaced with visible guilt. The other staff members shifted uncomfortably, looking down at the counter as if wishing they could disappear into the floor. Keanu wasn't finished. His voice remained steady, filled with quiet authority as he continued, "You judged him by his job, his clothes. But let me tell you, this man is one of the most loyal, kind-hearted people I know. He deserves respect. Just like anyone standing here today." A ripple went through the gathered customers. Many had witnessed the entire uncomfortable scene unfold from the beginning. Some had watched with sympathy, others with shame for having remained silent. Now, hearing Keanu's words, several of them nodded in agreement, visibly moved by the actor's defense of his driver. One woman in the back gave a small but firm clap, soon joined by a few others, creating a gentle ripple of applause. It wasn't loud or boisterous, just a sincere expression of support for what had just been said. The bank staff stood frozen, caught between embarrassment and a dawning realization of how poorly they had behaved. Their faces were flushed, their earlier smugness entirely stripped away. For that brief moment, the entire bank seemed to pause, the lesson hanging heavy in the air. Without uttering another word to the embarrassed staff, Keanu calmly reached over and took the signed documents from Robert's trembling hands. He gave his driver a small nod of reassurance before turning back to the counter. His movements were deliberate, composed. When the manager nervously stepped forward and offered, "Mr. Reeves, please, let us take you to our VIP room. We'll handle everything for you there." Keanu's expression remained unchanged. With a quiet but firm shake of his head, he replied, "No need. We'll complete the transaction right here." There was no need for special treatment, no desire for privileges. Keanu wanted to send a clear message, one that would resonate far louder than any outburst. He calmly handed over the documents and patiently waited as the now very flustered teller processed the deposit. The atmosphere remained tense. No one in the bank dared to speak above a whisper. The staff, visibly humbled, carried out the transaction quickly, hoping to redeem themselves even slightly. Once everything was complete, Keanu thanked the teller with a polite nod, turned to Robert, and together they walked out of the bank. The murmurs among customers began again, this time filled with admiration. Several people watched them leave, their respect for the actor visibly written across their faces. As they stepped onto the sidewalk, Robert, still visibly shaken by the ordeal, looked over at Keanu. His voice was soft, heavy with emotion. "Mr. Reeves, you didn't have to do that," he said quietly, his eyes betraying both gratitude and humility. Keanu smiled gently and rested a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I did have to," he replied simply. "Respect is for everyone, Robert, not just celebrities." Word of the incident spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Unbeknownst to Keanu, one of the customers had discreetly filmed part of the encounter and posted it online. Within hours, the video clips went viral, shared across social media platforms, accompanied by headlines like "Keanu Reeves stands up for his driver" and "A true example of humility." Comments flooded in, praising Keanu's integrity and kindness. And as for the bank staff, well, let's just say that management took swift action. The employees involved received a very thorough refresher on customer respect and equality, a lesson they would not soon forget. Sometimes, it's the small moments that show true character, and Keanu reminded us all that respect is for everyone, no matter who they are. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that touch the heart. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.